Thanks for tuning in today as we're all at home. I'm going to try to make this super fast and not so painful. Okay, so this is the worksheet that I handed out on Monday before you guys left, or excuse me, Tuesday before you guys left. But if you had the PDF version, then the front was one file and the back was a different file. So if you're doing it on Notability, it might look slightly different because we haven't shrunk down here on this paper. But, oh, and don't mind my beautiful placemats here. This is where my kids eat their meals. So, always time to learn about numbers. Okay, so back to the math. You guys, the good stuff. All right, we have these three families driving home from a family reunion. The table equation and graph below model the distance in miles of a family after traveling X hours. So we're going to do the same thing we did on Tuesday. We're going to create equations. This one's already done for us. Thank you. Create equations to represent each situation, right? So this is their distance from home, right? And so then we can figure out how long it took them to get home, how fast they were going, all the things. So for Aiden's family, looks like he started out 195 miles from home. So that just means he lives further from the reunion or closer from the reunion to his home. So my equation is going to be y equals something x plus something. Well, this is going to be the 195. So he is 195 miles from home when he leaves the reunion. And we can look here and see that he went 65 miles, 65 miles, 65 miles. So he's going 65 miles every hour. That's how fast he's driving. That's what this 65 stands for, because that is his repeating. And we're going to make that a negative because he's getting closer to home. That means that he is going 65 miles each hour, and then ultimately he ends up at home. Okay, we've got Ben. This tells us that Ben is 280 miles from home, and he was going 70 miles per hour. And then we've got Charlie's family. Our increments are kind of different. Every 2 lines is an hour. So this would be 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, and then 5. And this distance from home, it looks like it's going in increments of 30. So then we would have 60, 90, 120, 150, 180, 210, 240, 270. So now we have our increments filled in, so we can fill out our equation pretty easy. So if you look here, he starts 300 miles from home. So that means that Charlie's family was the furthest from wherever the reunion was. So his equation is going to be y equals something x plus the 300 miles he is from home. So we need to figure out how many miles he went an hour. Well, if I go down and over to an hour, that means I went down 30, 60 every hour. So his is going to be negative 60, right? 30, 60, 1 hour. 30, 60, 1 hour, because each of these increments is worth 30 miles. Okay, so now we have our equations, so we can answer all these questions. As soon as you have equations to compare, you have your slopes. That's how fast or how far they're going per hour. You have how far away they are from each location. So now we can answer these questions. Which family is driving home the fastest? Well, Ben's family is getting 70 miles closer to home each hour, so it's going to be Ben's family. Their speed is faster each hour, right? They are getting closer to home faster. It looks weird because it's a negative, but that's just telling us they are closer to home at a faster rate. Which family is driving the slowest? Well, similarly, we're going to look for the number that is the slowest. So that's going to be the 60 here. So Charlie's family. Their distance is less per hour. Right, so I guess up here we could say their speed, that's also their distance. Right, so their distance is also the speed. Right. Okay, let me make sure all that it was pointed out to me last week that sometimes this thing down here below, like on my screen, all the little apps down here will get in the way of the paper. So I want to make sure everybody can see that. All right, let's continue to answer questions. Which family lives the furthest from the reunion site? Okay, so that's where we're going to look at who started the furthest away from their house. So that's going to be Charlie's family because they are 300 miles away from their house when they start, which means the reunion site was the furthest for them. So we're going to say Charlie's family. They started 300 miles from home. Right? And that's our y-intercept, right? So here we were talking about slopes, right? That number in front of the x. And over here we're talking about the y-intercept, that one time where did they start phi. Which family lives closest to the reunion site? So which family had the least distance to travel to get home? Well, that's going to be Aiden's family. They started 195 miles from home. Right? So they had the least distance to travel. Which family drives the most in 3 hours? Okay, so mathematically explain your reasoning. So we look back over here, we can see that Aiden's family in 3 hours made the whole 195 miles. So Aiden, 195 miles, because they made it home in 3 hours. When we look at Charlie's family, at 3 hours, they were still 120 miles from home because they had further to go, but that means they had gone 180 miles. They had traveled all of these miles, and 120 plus 180 gives me the 300. So we know that Charlie's family had gone 180 miles. So right now they have not gone the furthest. Now, theoretically, because these people are traveling faster, they should have gone further in 3 hours. So let's figure out how far they got. So Ben's family, we would do negative 70x plus 280. That's going to be negative 70 times 3 plus 280. So that is negative 210 plus 280, which means that they only have 70 miles left. So if they started 280 away and they've gone 210, that means that they have gone the furthest. They've gone 210 miles, right? They've gotten closer. So Ben's family has traveled the furthest. Right? And if you remember, in class on Tuesday, you could have put 3 in for any of these x's to figure out how many miles they have gone or how many miles they have left. Which family arrives home first? Okay, this is a tricky one because you don't have to be going the fastest to arrive home first, right? So we already know that Aiden's family was done in 3 hours. We know that Ben's family still had 70 miles to go after 3 hours. And we know that Charlie's family still had 120 miles left to go. So even though this family is not driving necessarily the fastest, they didn't have as far to go. So which family arrives home first? Aiden's family. Mathematically, we could say not the fastest, but the least distance to travel. We know they made it home in those 3 hours. The other ones have further to go. Okay, suppose David's family also drives home from the reunion. Compared to the other families, David's family is traveling at the fastest speed, but has to drive the furthest to go home. Write a linear equation. So this is like the example where we had to figure out, oh gosh, what was it? I don't have it in front of me. It had to be more than 200 and less than 10. Oh, for the hats. for the shipping and for how much per hat, right? You guys did a great job. So we need to have y equals something x plus something. This number has to be greater than, and I know this is going to sound weird because this is a negative 70, but we're going to make it greater than 70 with a negative, because that will show us their speed. And again, it's also the distance from home, so it's kind of awkward. And this number has to be driving the fastest speed, but has to drive the furthest to get home. So this has to be greater than 300, because the furthest anybody had to go already was Charlie's family, which was 300. So as long as this number is somewhere like maybe negative 75 and this number is like 350, right? I know there were some people that got super fancy on Tuesday and they said like they would say negative 71 and 301, and that's fine. As long as these match up, you know, as long as it fits the criteria, then of course it would be accurate. And I know this is confusing with this negative here, but remember we're just talking about the absolute value. This number, the reason it's negative is because they're getting closer to home as opposed to getting further away from somewhere. All right, back. Here we go. Comparing linear functions. 3 friends participate in the loyalty program at a local coffee shop. A participant in the program earns points for each visit that can be used to get drinks and food for free. Sounds familiar. The graph below shows the point balance of the 3 friends over several weeks. So we have Adan, Bev, and Chad. So we can see them either earning points or spending points. That's what this tells us about Chad. He's just spending his free points. Describe what each line tells you about the friend's point balance. What can you tell about how they earn and use their points? Okay, so Bev's points, she pretty consistently earns 10 points every 2 weeks. So about 5 points a week. Right? So what can you tell us about a point balance? It is consistent. 5 points per week. Okay, we'll put earns here because her line is positive, so it's earning. Chad's point balance is also, Chad's is consistent, but he spends, or we'll put uses, because he's not really spending anything. He uses, looks like he's using 10 points per week. Okay, so that's a little different. So maybe he stopped purchasing things and he's just going through and using his points that he has left over. And then Adan's point balance is also consistent. That's how we get those straight lines. And he earns, looks like he's earning 10 points a week. Oh no, I'm sorry, yeah. Oh, it's 15 points a week because it goes up 15 and over 1. Up 15 over 1. Up 15 over 1. Yep. Sorry, that's my dog. Harley, it's okay. It's okay. Harley, it's okay. Hey, come here. You're fine. Harley. Okay. Shh. It's okay. All right. Harley. Hey, come here. Come here. Hey, sorry guys, just a second. Come here. There's no need to bark. There's no need to bark. There's nobody out there. Come here. Oh, you're okay. Come here. Come here and get some loving. Come here. Come here. Okay, sorry about that, friends. All right, so who has the most points to start? So for that one, we're going to look at our y-intercepts. Shh, 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 shh. Stop that. Stop that. Shh. You're fine. You're fine. You're fine. Okay, so the most points to start is 90. So that's Chad, because that's his y-intercept, right? So that's what we're looking at. All right, what's the slope and y-intercept of each line? So Bev's line, her slope we said was up 10 over 2, which can then be simplified to up 5 over 1. And her y-intercept is at 40. Chad's slope is -10 over 1 because he's spending those points, and his y-intercept is 90. And Adon's slope is up 15 over 1, right? Up 15 over 1. Hold on a second. Yep, up 15 over 1. And the y-intercept is at 15. So then if we're going to write an equation for each of these, no, you don't. Don't you do that. That's not nice. We have y equals 5x plus 40. We have y equals -10x plus 90. And then we have y equals 15x plus 15. So they all have very different spending habits and or earning habits, right? It doesn't look like Bev and Adon are using any of their points, and Chad's just zipping right through them. A fourth friend has a point balance represented by the equation 12x plus 50. Does the friend earn points at a faster or slower rate than Adon? How do you know? Well, because this 12 is less than Adon's 15, he's earning points at a slower rate. Right? That's what we look at. We look at those slopes there to see who's earning them faster or slower. What does the slope represent in this situation? Well, they kind of just told us. The rate that they're earning points. Sorry, my husband's out shoveling, and Harley seems to think that that's a major catastrophe. What does the y-intercept represent in this situation? That is the starting point balance. When do Chad and Adon have the same point balance? So that is going to be when we look back at our graph right here where they intersect. So they have the same point balance at 3 weeks, and it's 60 points. So that's 360 as the ordered pair, and that means at 3 weeks they both have 60 points. Okay, that's hopefully what you guys were able to do yesterday. If not, you were able to follow along now and glean something from it. Thank you for following along, and maybe I'll see you guys on Friday. Who knows? It's 9 o'clock on Wednesday night, and it's still kind of yucky out my window, but who knows? All right, have a good one, guys. Thanks. Bye. Be safe. Bye.